One Piece is an accident. A beautiful, glorious accident, but a gigantic mishap nonetheless. Some of the most iconic characters, moments, and even entire arcs in the series are the result of nothing more than pure coincidence. And we are going to start with a big revelation concerning a certain red-headed Shanks. Hello and welcome to the Grand Line Review, your source for everything One Piece. My name is Liam and my mother tells me that I wasn't an accident, but you can never really know. What we do know is Shanks. He's a guy, a boozy redhead who has a lot of trouble playing stringed instruments due to missing an arm that he lost in a bandit-related accident. Which, fun fact, like most accidents, was not planned. When Oda submitted his draft for the first chapter of One Piece, his editor rather bluntly stated, "Oda-kun, your story is not interesting." And so a young Oda went away and decided to amp up the drama by mutilating one of our key characters, thus resulting in potentially the most iconic scene in the whole series. What I'm getting at here is that Oda is not some sort of genius playing 12-dimensional chess. He's more like a child in a sandbox playing a very in-depth and orderly game of Lego Pirates. And I don't mean that as an insult because he is very good at Lego Pirates. The best, I would say, but it is truly astounding just how much of what makes One Piece great was effectively tacked on at the last second, or in certain cases came about through a series of very, very convenient accidents. Before we proceed though, our subscribers of the day are Electro Ninja, Kale Chips, and Michael Dude 12345, who all did an amazing thing, which was press the subscribe button for the Grand Line Review, which by the way, doing so will result in consistent injections of One Piece culture administered directly into your YouTube feed. So if you'd like to be our next subscriber of the day, then hit the button and please do say hi in the comments below if you are a new member of the Grand Fleet. Welcome. But let's now continue with one of the most impactful improvised decisions in all of the One Piece, which are the 7 warlords. These men, man-borgs, and woman are still to this day a centerpiece of the series. Their relevance may have faded in recent times, but for the vast majority of One Piece, they were a primary focus. So much so that Eiichiro Oda actually blames the length of the series pretty much entirely on them, as revealed in the 23rd log. I haven't finished One Piece yet despite the 20-year serialization. The main reason is these guys, referring to the warlords. At first, I intended to finish One Piece in 5 years. It was supposed to be a story to fight against pirates called Yonko, i.e. the 4 emperors. However, I came up with the idea of the warlords and I just thought it would be badass if these characters showed up. Then as you see, it caused this long serialization. I'm gonna go ahead and say that Oda probably didn't use the word badass, and that's probably just a very liberal translation, but the general idea gets even more insane. Because it's one thing to introduce an unintended group of antagonists, but how did he land on the number 7? Well, it was because, and I quote, "I thought 7 was a cool number. That being said, I don't regret it since I drew what I wanted." And then there's a bit of an ellipsis as Oda contemplates what he just said and corrects himself to say, "I'm regretting it a bit." Cool, so it was completely arbitrary. If Oda had slightly different views on what numbers were and were not cool, then we could have ended up with 5 warlords or 9 warlords or maybe even more, which to be fair would have made a lot of room for characters such as Drake Weehawk, Edward Meevil, and even Boa Kokomukuma. Who knows, maybe even Simon would have been offered a position instead of being perpetually kept on the waiting list. And just to display the impact that this arbitrary number had on One Piece, when you add up every arc directly helmed by a member of the 7 warlords, you end up with 324 chapters as well as 305 episodes of dedicated material just dealing with the warlords. And this doesn't count their involvement everywhere else like Sabidi, Impel Down, the Paramount Law, Fishman Island, and so on and so forth. They take up a lot of space. And I would estimate that at least 40% of One Piece is spent dealing with and or interacting with the 7 warlords. And before Wano, that number would have been above 50%. But at the same time, they're such a huge part of what makes this series so great. And to think that they were more or less just sort of made up on a whim, it's pretty astounding. Which seems to be fairly common for antagonists. And next we will be turning to one Rob Lucci. For a very quiet, sadistic, and dare I say morally irredeemable villain, Rob Lucci is a staple of One Piece. In fact, since his introduction, he has never ranked outside of the top 50 characters in any popularity poll officially conducted. And yet his entire existence is just a happy accident. When going into the Water 7 saga, Oda only had 2 ideas in mind. One of which was that he would end with saying goodbye to the Going Merry, and the other was that Frankie would join the crew. However, he didn't want to make Frankie's candidacy obvious, so Oda set about designing a compelling series of shipwrights that made up the Galila Company, including Lucci. And it was only after creating Galila that Oda thought to himself, I need a bad dude, or perhaps even bad dudes plural. And I have a lot of these spare characters just lying around, so you know what, let's use the pigeon guy, the long nose, the sexy secretary, and the cow man from the bar. There we go. Those are my bad guys. So there was a solid possibility that any Galileo member could have ended up in this role, be it Paulie, Tilestone, and you know what? There's probably even an alternate universe out there where Peppy Lulu became the most powerful member of CP9. And I've covered this in another video, but the exact same thing happened with Princess Vivi. Oda created Miss Wednesday to be a simple throwaway villain, someone who was likely just going to be discarded after Whiskey Peak with the rest of the Baroque works chumps. But to let Oda recount the tale, to tell the truth, many characters had more highlight scenes than I imagined. One of them is Vivi. She made her first appearance as an agent for Baroque works, but I didn't expect her to be more than that. One day I thought, she looks princessish when I drew her with her hair down. What if this girl is the Princess of Alabaster? And in this way, my idea about the Alabaster arc started. So not only was Miss Wednesday taken from a salacious, hypnotically breasted femme fatale and retconned into a sympathetic, modest, prim and proper princess, but this decision also had a massive domino effect that went on to shape the entire Alabaster arc. At this stage, I legitimately don't know what Oda is better at. Is he best at meticulous planning or is he better at improvising? Whatever the case, he is scarily good at both, but the latter doesn't quite get the credit it deserves. But now let's take a look at a pure accident. The final moments of Drum Island, where Kureha sets off Hiriluk's cure, transforming the mountain into a giant, beautiful sakura tree. And absolutely none of that was planned, which is particularly insane because Drum Island has this profound sakura motif. Hiriluk being inspired by cherry blossom trees, Dr. Kureha wearing a shirt with sakura petals, and even Chopper's hooves form the shape of a sakura petal, all of which was pure coincidence. In fact, Oda didn't even realize this until he was about to draw the conclusion of the arc, and according to him, he was reading a book about pollution and how it changed the color of snow, and then he thought that pink snow, that might be nice. And in that moment, Oda realized that he had accidentally crafted the perfect setup. In his own words, in short, the finale scene of the Drum Island arc was created just by pure luck. The mountain had a greater highlight scene than I expected. I was so lucky that I drew the mountain in that specific shape. Manga serialization is a wonderland. So there you go, one of the most perfect endings to any piece of story I've ever seen. And in reality, it was all just one big Kinemon moment where he nervously laughed and went, yeah, there guys, that was my plan all along, sure. Geez, being a genius it's pretty easy, isn't it? But I would say the most well-known example of improvisation in the series would be the supernovas. And here is Oda's statement regarding that event. I have to mention lore. Actually, it's not too much to say that all supernovas have more highlight scenes than I imagined. I created the supernovas right before the chapter where they got introduced. None of them existed in my plot notebooks before that chapter. I was in a desperate situation, worrying at this rate Sabati arc will not be interesting enough. Then inspiration for 9 supernovas came to mind unconsciously. I should have reduced the number of supernovas since there were way too many, but after all, I made all of them appear in the manga. I'm really surprised they survived till now, since I thought about half of them would drop out of the tough new world already. And it's at this point where I'm starting to think that Oda's improvisation is clearly trumping his planning. This insane man-god essentially crapped out 9 highly compelling and wonderfully well-designed characters the night before his assignment was due. And think about it this way, not only did he have to come up with 9 whole new characters as well as designs for their crews, but he also had to design 8 entirely new devil fruits on the spot as well. And not just cruddy throwaway fruits either, like all of the food-based ones on Whole Cake Island. No, because the purpose of introducing the supernovas was purely to make Sabati entertaining, and Oda had to seriously deliver on those fruit powers as well. You know, you can't just do something like, this is Basil Hawkins and his paramecia ability allows him to draw a perfect freehand circle. Yeah, that's right, Kizaru, you better be afraid. Although actually being able to draw a freehand circle it's impressive. But everything involving the supernovas since that event is just a continued string of improvisation, which specifically in the case of Trafalgar Law is nothing short of stunning. One of the most popular characters in the whole series with this hard-hitting, in-depth story, which ties seamlessly into other well-established characters, was just a complete fluke. In fact, after designing this group, Oda had no plans whatsoever for any of them other than a vague feeling regarding Eustace Kid. They are the worst. They are the worst generation, indeed. I imagined that Kid would become an important character, but Law, I didn't imagine that he would become such an important character. Weekly serialization is a wonderland. So I was reading Weekly when the supernovas were introduced, and at the time we all thought that Oda was some sort of mastermind just laying the groundwork for some sort of big payoff with each and every one of them. Which, to be fair, does look like it's happening, but that was far from the plan. And it's a great example of what I mean by Oda having accidentally created the perfect manga. Because whether he intended it or not, this uncanny ability to always wander down the correct path on nothing but a a whim is what separates him from other authors who practice this style and more often than not box themselves into pure mediocrity by consistently choosing the wrong paths. And here is another big one. One of the most gigantic revelations in the series was just a spur of the moment idea, which is that Ace is the son of Goldie Roger. According to one of Oda's editors in a 2017 interview, this decision was made very casually and very late into the process, and not necessarily by Oda actually, because the editor in question was asked, what do you think if Ace was Roger's son? To which the editor said, cool, and history was made that day. If that editor had said, no, that sounds kind of lame, Oda, what are you thinking? Then this series could look radically different. And this does make me seriously wonder if Ace was originally meant to be Luffy's biological brother, because he does bear a solid resemblance to Luffy, and his original appearance on Alabasta heavily implied that they were more traditionally related. By traditional, I mean two people having intercourse and producing spawn. At this point, it is almost impossible to tell what was planned and what wasn't, because whether Oda planned it or not, everything just seems to work out as if he did. And here's one I found out quite recently that kind of blew my mind, and this is going to bring us back to Shanks. But one of the crowning Shanks moments in the One Piece series is where he arrives to stop the war at Marineford. However, that was not the original plan. And sadly, we have no idea what the original plan was. But the very same editor who gave us the Ace revelation also stated that Shanks was not supposed to appear at the Paramount War. It was another last-minute organic decision that just sort of happened. But what I really want to know, given that, is how this war was originally supposed to end. Was Whitebeard going to die and everyone just like shrugs and goes home? And I cannot imagine how this was supposed to go down. Sort of like the Drum Island conclusion, Shanks was the perfect full stop to the Marineford arc, ending it on an explosive high note rather than some sort of dwindling battlefield. But as is often demonstrably the case, Oda made the right call at the last second, adding yet another in a series of spectacular moments that have turned One Piece into what I would describe as the perfect manga. And next up is what I would describe as the perfect video for you, because you like One Piece and there's always more to learn, explore, and experience with this wonderful series, so I look forward to seeing you there.